As lightning cracks across a dark and stormy sky, a new journey begins under a shroud of foreboding. Riding through the night, a man on horseback curses as his mount becomes difficult to control. One of his companions notes the ominous sky, while another man urgently yells they are near the swamp of demonic beasts and must escape quickly. As a man complains that the princess is useless junk, another shushes him, but inside the carriage, the pink-haired princess has already heard his cruel words. Identified as Princess Annette Hayworth, she sits alone, grimly acknowledging to herself that the man's assessment might not be wrong. A map reveals their perilous route through the swamp of demonic beasts, a treacherous borderland separating the Arkan and Hayworth lands from the Bayandor Empire. The narrative warns that the blood of the demonic beasts inhabiting this land is a deadly poison to humans. Those exposed to the beast's blood either die, become horribly disfigured, or require temple purification, making the creatures a constant source of terror. A chaotic memory flashes by of people screaming and fleeing in terror. In a flashback, Annette recalls being ostracized as the seed of a demonic beast and never treated as a true princess. She bitterly remembers being locked away in a dingy room, left to die by her own family. To survive, she became a knight, only for a past injury to force her to abandon the sword she had relied on for years. Her despair deepens as she considers her current fate, being sold off in a political marriage. A voice from her past echoes, adamantly refusing to marry a monster. The scene shifts to the opulent palace of the Hayworth kingdom. Queen Esther Hayworth gently urges a girl named Bridget to reconsider the marriage proposal, insisting it's not a bad thing. Bridget throws a tantrum before her parents, screaming that she refuses to marry someone whose face is rumored to be hideous. Identified as Annette's half-sister, Bridget Hayworth shrieks her refusal. King Yustin Hayworth sighs, weary of his daughter's outburst. As Annette, now in the throne room, begins a formal greeting, the king impatiently cuts her off and tells her to get to the point. The king announces that the powerful Arkan Empire has proposed an alliance, leaving Annette stunned by the news. He explains that the alliance could provide the help they need to defend against the ever-watchful Bayandor Empire. Annette is shocked to learn that the marriage alliance is for her and Grand Duke Harzan, not her sister Bridget. In a separate scene, Queen Esther smirks, callously remarking that it's better for the injured Annette to be useful by marrying the Grand Duke than to be a freeloader. The weight of her situation dawns on Annette as she finally understands her family's cruel intentions. An image depicts the Grand Duke in his prime, a handsome blonde man framed in gold. The portrait is then shown splattered with blood, explaining that the Grand Duke's beauty was lost to demonic beast blood, forcing him to hide his now hideous face behind a mask. Annette pieces it together, realizing the power-hungry Queen Esther must have initially tried to marry off Bridget. She concludes that when Bridget discovered her potential partner was the disfigured Grand Duke, she threw a fit, forcing the family to find a replacement. Returning to her conversation with the king, Annette quietly asks if this is an order, and he coldly confirms he isn't asking for her opinion. Queen Esther tells Bridget that Annette might grow to like the Arkan Empire, but Bridget points out the alliance requires a princess of noble blood. With a vicious sneer, Bridget taunts her sister, claiming anyone can see that Annette is far from noble. Annette turns and walks away, her back to the royal court. The scene transitions to the rustling leaves of a dark forest at night. Alone in her carriage, Annette resolves that for the sake of her kingdom's safety, she must make the alliance succeed, no matter the Grand Duke's reputation. Her red eyes flash with determination as she vows to do her best. Suddenly, the carriage window shatters violently. Annette finds an arrow embedded in the carriage wall, noting its distinctive red shaft and large fletching. She instantly recognizes the arrow as belonging to the Bayandor Empire. Holding the arrow, she questions how their enemy could have known about her secret journey, suspecting a surprise attack. Her thoughts are interrupted by a frantic shout from outside, warning that demonic beasts have appeared. The chaos outside intensifies. With the carriage overturned, a guard realizes they've been caught in a coordinated ambush of Bayandor arrows and demonic beasts. Annette's eyes widen as she takes in the sudden, violent turn of events. A massive, horned demonic beast with glowing red eyes lunges directly at her. As a man lies bleeding on the ground, he weakly pleads with two approaching demonic beasts to stay away. Elsewhere, another man is cornered by three beasts and screams for help. In a flash of red light, a demonic beast is cleanly sliced in two. An attendant stares in shock as Annette stands calmly amidst the carnage, her hand dripping with blood. As Annette walks away from the slaughtered beasts, her dress stained crimson. A terrified attendant calls out for her to wait. With blood on her face, Annette curses, realizing the danger isn't over, as more beasts could be lurking nearby. Surrounded by slain wolf-like creatures, she identifies them as high-ranking demonic beasts. Lying wounded, she reaches for an arrow, lamenting that she has no sword and no allies to help her. She acknowledges another handicap, being forced to fight with her non-dominant left hand. In a blur of motion, she prepares to act despite the odds. Tearing a piece from her blood-soaked dress, she resolves to fight the beasts barehanded. Her determination is fueled by a single thought. She cannot allow this alliance to fail. As the night darkens, she realizes the swarm of beasts feels less like a random encounter and more like a targeted attack. Suddenly, a burning heat courses through her body, her own system turning against her. A hooded young man with dark hair notices something unexpected in the distance. At the imposing gates of the Arkan Empire, guards issue a sharp challenge, demanding identification. Exhausted and bloodied, Annette looks up in relief, realizing she has finally reached the gates of the Arkan Empire with her urgent message. In the darkness of the forest, she stands alone over the bodies of her fallen attendants. The scene transitions to a bright, sunlit room, far from the dark forest. Her red eyes flutter open, taking in the new, peaceful surroundings. Waking up, she finds herself as a small child in a lavish bedroom, wondering if this is the Imperial Palace. She quickly deduces her presence here means the marriage contract has been officially accepted, but as she tries to think, she's shocked to hear a child's voice, realizing something is very wrong. Her mind reels in absolute shock at the impossible situation. A flashback reveals her birth. The king recoils in horror, questioning how a demonic beast child with red hair could be born from the silver-haired queen. With eyes as red as a beast's, the baby is seen as an omen, and the maids can only apologize as they imply the queen has died. The king is overcome with grief, as the narration confirms the queen died shortly after giving birth. Enraged by his loss, the king refused to acknowledge the girl as his child, turning his back on her completely. The king descends into despair, believing the princess's red hair and eyes are a curse that will bring ruin to his family. He drowns his sorrow in alcohol, wondering if the queen was tainted by a beast while neglecting his royal duties. A gentle hand touches his shoulder, interrupting his downward spiral. A slyly smiling maid with reddish-brown hair steps in to comfort the grieving king. Seeing her opportunity, the king began to systematically erase every memory of his late queen, including their own child. An official announces the king's decree. Prince Franz is to be relocated from his palace. A maid holding the infant princess expresses her concern, arguing that relocating the frail young prince would endanger him. The young boy is identified as Franz Hayworth, the late queen's eldest son and Annette's older brother. Young Franz bravely tells a woman named Sarah not to worry about him, pleading with her to look after his newborn sister instead. Deeply moved, Sarah clutches the baby, her heart aching for the young prince's plight. The official coldly refers to the baby as the spawn of the red beast and orders her to be confined, demanding Sarah hand her over. Sarah defiantly clutches the princess, vowing to protect her, and thus becomes her sole caretaker and nurse. Years later, Sarah, now her nanny, watches over a young Annette in bed, who sleepily calls out to her. Huddled in fear, Annette confesses she's heard the whispers calling her a beast seed and worries she might one day hurt the only person who cares for her. Her nanny firmly takes her hands, reassuring her that such thoughts are not true. With a gentle smile, she tells the princess to forget the cruel rumors, insisting she is not a monster. But her nanny's kindness couldn't save her. A simple cold, left untreated due to neglect, turned to fatal pneumonia, leaving a young Annette to weep alone. Years later, a teenage Annette stands before the throne room, only to be venomously berated by the new queen. Resolved, Annette decides she would rather die seeking a meaningful life than waste away in isolation. She kneels before the court, formally addressing the king to make her plea. She begs to join the beast subjugation campaign, but the king scoffs internally at her request. He coldly considers that it would be better for her to die fighting than to remain a burden, a thought Annette seems to sense. And so, against all odds, the Red Princess joined the beast subjugation campaign. Everyone expected her to die, but she returned alive, revealing incredible strength, resilience, and tactical skill. She became a legend, hailed as the continent's greatest swordswoman, a warrior seemingly cursed and empowered by the very beast she hunted. The memory of her past fades, returning her to the present, a young red-haired girl with bandages on her face, points forward with a look of stunned realization. Now aware of her new form, she examines her hands, marveling at how incredibly tiny they are. She pinches her cheeks, surprised by the softness of her own flesh. Wincing in pain, she realizes her grip remains strong and questions what has happened to her body. She looks up in shock at a regal-looking blonde man and purple-haired woman, wondering who they are. The purple-haired woman addresses the girl as Lady Hayworth. Surprised, she's awake, while the blonde man suggests calling for the imperial physician. Formally curtsying, the red-haired girl introduces herself as Annette Hayworth, greeting the imperial majesties of the Arkan Empire. The blonde-haired man is identified as Tushis Arkan, Emperor of the Arkan Empire, who observes Annette with a curious look. The purple-haired woman, Empress Charlotte Arkan, warmly tells Annette to rise, concerned for her well-being. Emperor Tushis acknowledges that it is indeed Lady Hayworth, noting her childlike appearance, causing Annette to realize how young she must seem. Held by the Empress, Annette worries that her new, small body could jeopardize the political alliance. Now in a beautiful pink dress, Annette is stunned by its elegance, thinking it's more lavish than anything she's ever seen. She silently wonders why the Arkan Empire, which she believes has no princess, would possess such fine clothes for a young girl. A maid announces their arrival at the banquet hall, leaving Annette confused as she had expected to be taken to a reception room. Overwhelmed by a brilliant light and a grand scene, Annette shields her eyes in disbelief. She stares in utter awe at a cart overflowing with a magnificent feast. Her eyes widen at the sight of countless exquisite dishes and desserts she has never before encountered. Emperor Tushis explains they brought her directly to the banquet, concerned that she hadn't eaten properly since her arrival. Seated at the grand table, Annette looks at the delicious spread and ponders where to even begin. As Empress Charlotte watches with a kind smile, Annette decides to start with the soup. She takes her first bite of the soup. Her eyes flare wide with shock and delight as the incredible flavor washes over her. Slurp, slurp. She eagerly eats the soup, moved by a taste so warm and smooth it feels like it's warming her very heart. When Empress Charlotte asks if the food is good, Annette beams with joy, exclaiming that it's absolutely delicious. The Emperor and Empress share a small, amused smile at Annette's adorable reaction. Having quickly finished her meal, Annette politely thanks her hosts for their thoughtful care. Empress Charlotte asks if Grand Duke Harsant has been informed of Annette's arrival, and Emperor Tushis confirms a message was sent immediately. While the Empress wonders aloud about the Grand Duke's reaction, Annette listens with a suddenly serious expression. The Emperor notes the surprise of her arrival with the betrothal pledge, adding that the Grand Duke's return from a campaign is uncertain. Annette clenches her fist under the table, recognizing his words as an excuse from a man who must despise her as the beast's seed. The Empress reassures her that the Grand Duke will come, but Annette calmly insists that she is all right. Annette asks for confirmation that she was found in her child form, and the Emperor verifies that guards saw a child collapse after delivering an imperial crest. As the Emperor asks for the story of her journey, Annette agrees, but insists on revealing something critical first. With grim determination, Annette declares her fear that a traitor in the Hayworth Kingdom is colluding with the enemy Bandor Empire. She begins her tale, explaining that just before the beasts attacked her carriage, an arrow flew inside. She asserts it was a red arrow from the Bandor Empire, which she was forced to use as a weapon to defend herself. Annette explains the grave implications. The enemy now has proof of a Hayworth spy, which they could use to shatter the alliance. Lost in thought, she desperately wonders how she can possibly salvage the situation and change their minds. The Emperor questions if she was abandoned, while the Empress expresses awe that she fought off beasts with just an arrow in her bare hands. Annette, caught off guard by their reactions, feels a strange shift in the atmosphere. Emperor Tushis notes that while the beast was powerful enough to overwhelm knights, he cannot forgive her guards for deserting their post. Her hope flickering, Annette timidly asks what this means for the alliance. Emperor Tushis smiles, reassuring her that since she signed the contract, she is already considered part of the imperial family and should not worry. Empress Charlotte warmly agrees, inviting Annette to relax and get to know them, as they will soon be family. A little dazed but relieved, Annette quietly agrees, stating that she understands. The Empress smiles and suggests that her current situation might not be such a bad thing after all, puzzling Annette. The scene flashes back to a physician examining Annette in bed, assuring the Emperor and Empress that she only has minor bruises and will recover fully. Returning to the present, Annette quietly processes the memory of their concern. The Empress gestures to Annette's hand, smiling as she points out that it is already healed completely. Annette looks up with a slight blush, touched by the unexpected kindness she is being shown. Annette flexes her healed hand, marveling that she can wield a sword again and wondering how the Hayworth Kingdom will react. She recalls being pushed into retirement the moment she was injured, suspecting they'll now claim a beast's curse healed her. Deciding it's no longer her concern, she lets go of her resentment with a sigh of relief. Her thoughts are interrupted as she realizes both the Emperor and Empress are staring at her, making her wonder if she has something on her face. Empress Charlotte smiles warmly, guessing aloud that Annette looks to be about 7 years old. Emperor Tucius disagrees, estimating she's closer to 8, as she's about the same size as someone named Mikhail. Annoyed, Annette internally shouts that she can hear them, thinking she looks closer to 10 and realizing her fiancé must be younger than she thought. Oh my, the Emperor and Empress are caught off guard by her reaction, looking flustered. Composing himself, the Emperor states that he almost forgot something important. He presents a glowing blue purification stone, explaining it must be purified at a temple since it's stained with beast's blood. As the beautiful stone radiates light, he adds that entering a temple would be difficult for her in her current state. Annette agrees, stating it's safer if fewer people know about her condition and that she'd rather avoid the temple. She remembers the contemptuous looks of priests in her own kingdom, preferring to purify herself with the stone instead. A beautiful, glowing purification stone is highlighted as a masterpiece. It's explained that knights and mercenaries often buy these stones in the Arkan Empire's capital before hunting beasts. Annette gratefully accepts the stone, thinking her own knights likely never bothered to budget for one for her. Zap! As she touches the stone, it emits a bright flash of energy. The Emperor comments that there are no records of the Hayworth Knights ever buying a purification stone, leaving Annette stunned. He then smiles and asks Annette if she knows how to use it. He clarifies that he once received one as a gift, and Annette, holding the stone, feels a wave of relief. Emperor Tucius asks Empress Charlotte if she's already told Mother, and she confirms she had to in order to obtain the stone quickly. Sigh. The Empress informs a surprised Annette that she must accompany her to pay respects to the Empress Dowager. Annette voices concern over her condition, but the Empress reassures her that the Empress Dowager has already been informed. Thump. Now in a new red dress with her hair in braids, Annette stands before the massive doors to the Empress Dowager's chambers. Following the Empress, Annette worries her childish appearance will jeopardize the marriage, and the Empress asks if she's nervous. Annette admits she is, and the Empress comforts her, saying it's natural when meeting her future mother-in-law. The words mother-in-law catch Annette completely by surprise. Blushing furiously, she realizes the Empress is right, having initially forgotten the implications of her betrothal. As the Empress reaches for the door, Annette panics and asks her to wait a moment. Too late, they enter the chamber where an elderly woman with light blue hair sits. The Empress introduces Lady Hayworth to the Empress Dowager. Annette gives a polite, if nervous, curtsy in her beautiful red dress. A moment of silence passes, and Annette anxiously wonders why the Empress Dowager hasn't spoken. The Empress Dowager's inner thoughts reveal she is truly at a loss for words. With a stern expression, the Empress Dowager asks if this child is really Cardin's betrothed. Annette maintains a stoic, if slightly strained, smile under the intense scrutiny. A sense of dread washes over her as she thinks, "This is bad." The scene shifts to the dark, foreboding border region of the Swamp of Demonic Beasts, where a voice cries out for "Your Highness." Another voice shouts for the Grand Duke as a blue sword flashes through the darkness. A blonde-haired man stands alone in a field of monster corpses, his men staring in awe at his solo victory. A man with glasses named Samuel remarks that after a battle of this scale, the monster should stay quiet for a month. Another man sharply tells Samuel to be quiet, and Samuel nervously backpedals, insisting he doesn't want to get killed. Samuel quickly composes himself with a cough, admitting he got a little worked up. The blonde-haired Grand Duke turns his head, a thoughtful look on his face. With blood splattered on his cheek, the Grand Duke smirks, thinking to himself that his princess has finally come. Back in the tense audience chamber, Annette repeats her fearful thought, "This is bad!" She inwardly frets over the intimidating Empress Dowager, noting the striking good looks of the Arkan royals, and feeling like a mere child in comparison. Annette stands with the Empress before the seated Empress Dowager, who observes her with a critical eye. The Empress Dowager glares, asking for confirmation that this child is truly Cardin's partner. Annette flinches slightly, but manages to confirm that it is correct. When the Empress Dowager asks if Cardin knows, Empress Charlotte explains that a message was sent, but the Grand Duke is currently on a mission. The Empress Dowager hopes the news reaches him, as Annette realizes Grand Duke Harzant must be deeply loved by his family. A flashback reveals Emperor Tushis created the purification stone for his sick younger brother. This act was born from the Emperor's fear that his brother might not find a proper marriage, hence the political arrangement. Annette understands the kindness shown to her is because she is to be the Grand Duke's wife, and she feels a pang of envy. Her thoughts are shattered when the Empress Dowager says something that makes her gasp in shock. The Empress Dowager invites her to sit and speak comfortably as future family, and a flustered Annette agrees. Now seated, Annette panics, completely at a loss for what to say. She nervously wrings her hands, desperately trying to remember how to win over her future mother-in-law. Zing. A close-up shows the Empress Dowager's piercing blue eye, sizing her up. With a soft sigh, the Empress Dowager announces the beginning of their tea time. Maids wheel in 2 carts, laden with an extravagant assortment of desserts. The camera zooms in on the delectable spread of cakes, macarons, and brownies. Empress Charlotte marvels at the sheer amount of food, but the Empress Dowager simply states that it's only natural. Empress Charlotte notes that some of the desserts look unique and asks if they were brought from the capital. The Empress Dowager explains she ordered a wide variety, not knowing Annette's taste, and invites her to try them. Annette stares in awe at the beautiful desserts, thinking she's never seen such works of art. Unsure how to proceed, she recalls being told that adults appreciate children who eat well. Resolved, she decides to try the desserts, reaching for a slice of strawberry cake. Nom, she takes her first eager bite. The incredible flavor transports her to a whimsical world of floating strawberries and swirling cream. Empress Charlotte smiles warmly, pleased that Lady Hayworth seems to be enjoying the treats. The Empress suggests this must also bring joy to the Empress Dowager, who now has a noticeable smudge of cake on her face. Aghast, Annette realizes she forgot her manners while eating, fearing she'll be seen as greedy. She quickly sets down her fork and apologizes to the Empress Dowager for eating so absent-mindedly. In a moment of panic, Annette offers a treat to the Empress Dowager, insisting it's delicious. The older woman gasps. Whoa! The Empress Dowager suddenly recoils, slumping in her seat as Annette cries out in alarm. Annette leaps to her feet, frantically asking if Her Majesty is all right. Empress Charlotte gently places a hand on the Empress Dowager, telling a confused Annette that she should go rest now. Reassuring Annette that she will handle it, the Empress urges her to go inside, and Annette reluctantly agrees. A maid in a green dress now leads a somber Annette down a long, elegant corridor. Annette calls out to the maid, who turns and asks the princess what she needs. With a worried expression, Annette asks if the Empress Dowager has always had health problems. The maid sweats nervously, unable to find the right words to answer. Seeing her reaction, Annette sadly concludes the collapse was her fault and tells the maid she doesn't have to answer. The maid smiles kindly and introduces herself as Serena, inviting Annette to speak with her comfortably. Annette then asks Serena if there is a place nearby for a walk, and Serena suggests the rear garden. Promising that it will be fine, Serena accepts Annette's request, and Annette agrees to be in her care. As they walk onto a balcony, Annette wonders why no one seems worried about the possibility that she might be stuck in this child's body forever. She feels a growing sense of isolation, thinking she's the only one truly uneasy about her condition. Serena kindly warns her to watch her step as they descend the stairs into the beautiful garden. Annette pauses, assuming all this kindness is simply for the sake of the political alliance. But then she recalls the Emperor's gentle smile and realizes his concern felt genuine, not just political. Remembering the kindness from the Emperor, Empress, and Serena, she stands in the vibrant garden and realizes this place is different. Annette calls out to Serena, who turns to face her. Looking up at her attendant, Annette boldly asks if Serena is afraid to look into her eyes. Serena tilts her head, genuinely perplexed as to why she would ever be afraid. Annette looks up, surprised by the maid's simple and honest lack of fear. When Serena asks why she would ask such a thing, Annette dismisses it and urges them to continue their walk. Reflecting on these normal, simple interactions, Annette feels a spark of hope that here, she might finally live a life without being despised. In a dark, misty forest, an unseen person asks if the princess has arrived, while Samuel reports that she has. But there's a problem. Samuel finishes reading a letter, announcing its contents are from His Majesty the Emperor. The masked Grand Duke reads that the princess encountered misfortune and tells a man named Morton he's heading straight to the capital. His men are stunned, and Samuel asks if he's not even going to his own castle first. The Grand Duke insists he must hurry, thinking to himself that he's quite looking forward to finally seeing his princess. A red-haired girl with glowing eyes glares fiercely, setting a dramatic tone amidst a collage of faces hinting at the story's depth. The scene shifts to the Empress Dowager, who is overcome with joy, declaring Annette's cuteness should be a crime. She asks Empress Charlotte why she didn't mention how adorable Cardin's companion was, and the Empress admits she was surprised too. The two women giggle with delight, and the Empress notes that the Empress Dowager doesn't seem surprised by Annette's condition. The Empress Dowager calmly states that between the Emperor's ability and Cardin's nature, she isn't worried about the situation. Empress Charlotte nods in quiet agreement. Roar! With fiery determination, the Empress Dowager declares that children should be plump and demands tea again tomorrow. She vows to fatten Annette up until she shines, and a distant Empress Charlotte agrees to prepare tea regularly. Whew! Empress Charlotte lets out a sigh of relief as a grand red door closes. She turns to her maids and asks if Serena has escorted Lady Hayworth to her room yet. Serena, the maid in the green dress, reports that the princess requested a walk in the garden, seeming troubled by the Empress Dowager's collapse. Empress Charlotte worries that despite her efforts, they've already caused a stir and possibly a bad first impression. Outside near the palace gates, Annette, now in a red and white dress, hopes a walk will clear her head. As she frets about ruining her chances with the imperial family, she hears a noise and shouts, "Who's there?" A blonde boy with purple eyes jumps out, startled, and points accusingly at her. Annette recognizes him as Crown Prince Mikhail Alkin, who demands she identify herself at once. Mortified, she wonders how to explain she's his future aunt, and instead introduces herself as a foreign guest of the Empire. She explains she'll be staying for a while on business, and the young prince listens intently. Suddenly, Mikhail declares that she must have fallen for him, and followed him here, leaving Annette utterly speechless. The prince smugly informs her he cannot return her feelings, as his heart already belongs to someone named Audrey. Annette fumes internally, wondering who on earth taught a child to speak like that. Empress Charlotte suddenly appears, chiding Mikhail for being away from his etiquette class. The prince stammers in surprise. The Empress apologizes to Annette for any offense, but Annette quickly waves it off, apologizing for interrupting the prince's time. Now thoroughly confused, Mikhail asks his mother who this young lady is. The Empress simply tells her son that he must be polite. Zap! A jolt of realization seems to strike the young prince. Now seated inside, the Empress tells Annette it's better for Mikhail to be surprised than rude, promising to explain things to him later. She then asks Annette if she was very surprised by the Empress Dowager's collapse, and Annette meekly confirms she was. The Empress smiles, explaining the collapse was out of fondness, not dislike, and mentions a surprise gift is on its way tomorrow. Visibly relieved, Annette nervously wrings her hands before asking a question that's been on her mind. She asks why the Empress keeps calling her Lady Hayworth, and the Empress replies with a smile that it's because she's a huge fan. Empress Charlotte gushes that Lady Hayworth's monster-fighting exploits are legendary and magnificent, even in their empire. Annette is taken aback, surprised the Empress even knows the name of her sword, Rubelino. The Empress states, of course, she knows the name of the sword she always carried. Annette quietly adds she returned it upon her resignation. Shocked, the Empress declares that Rubelino is an extension of Annette herself, questioning how anyone could take something so precious from a knight. Annette insists it's fine, but the Empress looks unconvinced as the room falls silent. Serena arrives to announce the bath is ready, and Empress Charlotte notes how late it has become. The Empress addresses Lady Hayworth, and Annette looks up to answer. With a gentle smile, the Empress tells Annette that she must be worried about Grand Duke Harzen as well. The next morning, Annette wakes in a lavish bed to find Serena apologizing for waking up late. Serena reassures her that it's still early and announces she has important news. She happily reports that His Highness the Grand Duke has arrived at the palace, stunning Annette into asking if Grand Duke Harzen has really come. Serena confirms that he left immediately upon hearing of her arrival and reached the palace this morning. Annette puzzles over how he arrived so quickly from a 3-day journey, then asks Serena what kind of person he is. When Serena asks for clarification, Annette explains that she's curious about anything she can tell her. Serena becomes flustered, internally debating whether she should tell the truth about his personality. She offers Annette a warm towel, cautiously stating that while she doesn't know him well, She's heard he's a very wise and capable person. Now a small child again, Annette reflects on the Grand Duke, concluding he must not be the type to get close to people. She is formally greeted by a blonde man and a purple-haired woman, who welcome Princess Hayworth and compliment her beauty. Dressed in a fine gown, Annette thanks them for the warm welcome and the Empress Dowager's gifts as the woman invites her to sit. Annette smiles, relieved and grateful, believing this kind reception means the Grand Duke won't see her as unlucky. As she sits with the royal couple, the blonde man explains they only stopped by for a moment, as it is her first meeting. Annette tilts her head in confusion, puzzled by his choice of words. The blonde man notes that the person they await is never late, just as purposeful footsteps approach. A man with glasses rushes ahead, frantically calling for the Grand Duke to slow down. An attendant formally announces the grand entrance of the imposing, blonde-haired and black-masked Grand Duke Harzant. Annette's eyes widen in shock as she recognizes the formidable man who has just entered the room. The Grand Duke strides directly towards Annette, his sudden speed startling the blonde man. A nervous Annette watches as the masked Duke gets closer and closer. He looms over her, his voice dripping with disdain as he questions if she is even human, leaving her frozen in fear. Watching from a distance, the blonde man and purple-haired woman are shocked, with the man calling out the name Cardan. Cardan's internal monologue finishes with a surprising twist. He can't believe a person could be so cute. To everyone's shock, the fearsome Grand Duke kneels before the small princess, utterly captivated by her. In a flashback, an attendant named Samuel wearily asks the Grand Duke how many hours he spent primping for this meeting. The Grand Duke, Cardan, anxiously asks Samuel for his opinion on 2 different suits while looking in a mirror. Samuel sighs, reassuring him that both suits look good while complaining that he has been admiring his reflection for hours. With an intense glare, Cardan turns to Samuel and menacingly asks if he is bored. A startled Samuel quickly denies it, prompting Cardan to demand he pay proper attention. Posing proudly, Cardan nervously asks his attendant if he looks strange or all right. Flustered, Samuel can only offer a formal, over-the-top compliment that His Highness is overflowing with grace. Cardan continues to fret in front of the mirror, worrying aloud that she might be scared of him, and wondering if he should wear a brighter color. Since she is still a child, he resolves that he wants to appear as kind and considerate as possible. Samuel checks his pocket watch, urgently reminding His Highness that it's time to go. Shocked by the late hour, Cardan immediately blames his attendant for not telling him sooner. He yells at his incompetent official and storms out for the drawing room, leaving a stressed Samuel to mutter that he did, in fact, tell him. Back in the present, the blonde man and purple-haired woman share an awkward laugh over the Grand Duke's behavior. With his hand over his heart, Cardan theatrically asks for the princess's hand. Annette is bewildered, struggling to reconcile this man with the infamous warmonger and cruel murderer, Cardan Harzant. The blonde man rubs his temples in frustration, muttering that the brat has lost his mind and is acting like a clown. Beside him, the purple-haired woman looks on with a tired, unimpressed expression. The blonde man covers a smirk, commenting that the Grand Duke has arrived just in time. He then asks Cardan why he's there, provoking an angry outburst from the Duke, who calls him that thing. The blonde man calmly explains that since he is leading the alliance, it's his duty to attend their first meeting. Cardan bows, stating his desire to greet his future partner alone, and respectfully asking the Majesties to leave them. Annette is taken aback by his forward declaration about spending the rest of his life with her. A cartoonish flashback shows the young blonde royal looking annoyed as Cardan makes a grand gesture. Cardan asks the blonde man why he's glaring, oblivious to the dark, angry aura radiating from him. The blonde man suggests to his companion that their presence might be uncomfortable, and she questions if he's actually leaving. Though he protests that he wanted to see the fun, the purple-haired woman gently insists that they go. Once they are alone, Cardan apologizes to Annette for his unsightly behavior. Annette stammers that it's all right, and when she invites him to sit, he politely asks if he may sit next to her. She internally panics, wondering why he is being so careful with her, and fearing the beast's blood drove him mad. The two sit side by side on the large sofa, in a quiet, slightly awkward moment. When his intense staring makes her blush, she admits she's shy, and he immediately apologizes. Her heart pounds in her chest as she realizes this gentleman is completely different from what she had imagined. The Grand Duke extends his hand toward her, preparing to introduce himself properly. With his hand on his heart, he formally states his name is Cardan Harzant. Annette hesitantly introduces herself as Annette Hayworth to the masked Grand Duke Harzant. The Grand Duke gently holds her hand, remarking on how small it is. She insists she's actually 24. He acknowledges this with a slight nod, confirming he knows she is 2 years his senior. Grabbing her hands, he looks down at her with an unreadable expression as she begins to speak. Annette worries aloud that in this child's body, she won't be able to fulfill the duties of a Grand Duchess he expects. The Grand Duke stops her, questioning what she means about the duties he expects and her inability to handle them. Flustered, Annette clarifies she's only speaking hypothetically and won't do anything if he doesn't want her to. Leaning forward, the Grand Duke bluntly asks if she wants to break off the engagement now. Annette quickly denies it, explaining she was actually worried that he would be the one to call it off. With determined eyes, she vows to do her best at everything, even offering to live as if she were dead if he commands it. An unseen voice emphatically tells her to stop. The Grand Duke clenches his fist, clearly distressed by her words. Covering his face with a hand, he admits he doesn't know where to begin, and first asks why she thought he'd break the engagement. Annette looks down, hesitating to answer his question. With a pained expression, she confesses her belief that he wouldn't want her as his bride. Clasping her hands tightly, she explains she assumed he would want someone named Bridget instead, wondering who would choose her. The Grand Duke clarifies that he explicitly asked for a princess of noble blood, and upon seeing her name on the proposal, he was relieved the king wasn't foolish enough to misunderstand. He turns his head slightly, and Annette looks away as he trails off, unable to complete his thought. Stunned, Annette thinks to herself, "He really wanted me?" before asking if he knows much about her. The Grand Duke's piercing blue eyes stare back as she asks if he knows about the rumors or the curse. He silently concludes that something terrible must have happened in her kingdom and that the people around her have no conscience. Annette nervously clenches her fist, backtracking and saying she was only asking just in case. The two sit in a grand room, a silent tension between them. The Grand Duke gazes at her, telling her she is someone who's too good for him. Surprised, Annette looks at him, stammering that she is nobody special. He insists that she is too good for him and offers to tell her a secret, to which she nervously agrees. Shh. He brings a finger to his masked lips, asking her to lend him her ear for a moment. He leans in close, gently cupping her head as Annette internally panics at their proximity. Snap. Her eyes fly wide open in utter shock after hearing what he whispered. She stares at him in disbelief, certain she must have misheard what he just told her. Looking down at her, the Grand Duke calmly states that she did not mishear. Annette apologizes, still struggling to process his words and thinking she may have misheard after all. The Grand Duke confirms her fears. If she heard that he's an illegitimate child, then she heard correctly. He begins to explain the simple story behind his birth, noting the late emperor often made mistakes while enjoying himself. He continues, explaining the emperor couldn't kill someone of imperial blood, so the Empress Dowager took him in. Annette looks troubled by the revelation, her face reflecting her pity. He asks her not to make that face, explaining the Empress Dowager raised him as her own, and he thinks of her as his real mother. He adds that he grew up very happy and lucky, and Annette expresses her relief to hear it. Annette cautiously puts a finger to her lips as she asks about the person who actually gave birth to him. He explains that his mother was promised wealth and a new life, but died right after he was born. What? Annette is horrified and immediately apologizes for asking such a question, but he reassures her it doesn't bother him. He coldly speculates that the late emperor dealt with her, calling his birth mother foolish for revealing her pregnancy and believing she could be free. Annette fidgets uncomfortably, wondering how to deal with the heavy atmosphere his story has created. Leaning toward her, the Grand Duke softly tells her that she's a truly kind princess. He looks down with a gentle sadness, saying he's certain her mother loved her dearly and would have been overjoyed to be with her. Her eyes well up slightly, touched by his unexpected words of comfort. A peaceful floral atmosphere surrounds them as they sit together on the couch. The Grand Duke adjusts his collar, asking if she now understands that she is far nobler and too good for an illegitimate child like him. Annette wipes away a tear, wondering why this man is revealing his own weakness to her. He seems to notice her concern, a thoughtful expression on his face. He asks if she is disappointed by his revelation, and she, startled, quickly insists she isn't at all. Relieved, the Grand Duke promises to share another secret once they are at the Grand Duchy as he prepares to leave. He assures her that while he may be a liar, he isn't a con artist, and that there is a way to restore her body, though it will take time. Holding a small object he's given her, Annette looks at her hand and expresses her sincere relief that there's a solution. The Grand Duke makes one last request, telling her she can bankrupt the family or do nothing all day if she wishes. He grips his lapel and pauses after saying, however, leaving Annette to look up and question his unfinished thought. She bolts upright in bed, struck by a sudden thought. Could he actually have feelings for her? A deep blush spreads across her face as she seriously considers this startling new possibility. Knock knock, an attendant announces the Empress's arrival, and Annette, sitting on her bed, tells them to let her in. Empress Charlotte enters and greets Annette warmly, apologizing for making her eat lunch by herself. Annette reassures her it was fine since she ate with Serena, then politely asks how the Empress's luncheon with the noble ladies went. The Empress remembers her purpose, explaining that the Empress Dowager has invited them for tea, and she came to get her. As they walk through the palace halls, the Empress observes that Annette and Serena must have gotten quite close for her to be using her first name. Worried the Empress might be upset, Annette confirms their friendship and graciously offers the Empress permission to use her first name as well. Touching her cheek with a happy smile, the Empress accepts, calling her Annette and explaining she was just surprised by the kind gesture. Changing the subject, the Empress asks why Annette didn't have lunch with the Grand Duke, and Annette explains he went to the temple to notarize their vows. Realizing their engagement must now be official, the Empress clasps her hands in excitement. Annette confirms, adding she gave him a lock of hair. In a flashback, the Grand Duke explains to Annette he needed a lock of her hair as proof of consent for the priest to certify their vows despite her condition. The Empress thinks to herself that the Grand Duke is quite something, radiating an impressive aura as Annette meekly agrees. Leading her down the stairs, the Empress announces that tea will be outdoors today, as narration explains the imperial family's divine authority. The narration continues, stating this blessing of God is why the people revere them, flashing back to the Grand Duke, knowing his royal proof could not be denied. The Empress clenches her fist, thinking to herself that the Grand Duke's actions were all because he wanted to be with Annette. With a playful smile, she asks Annette to take good care of their immature Grand Duke, which leaves Annette sputtering in his defense. When the Empress asks what she means, Annette passionately praises Grand Duke Hardzin's ideal values. She continues, describing him as an upright and sincere person, causing the Empress to wonder just who she is talking about. A nearby lady-in-waiting, Serena's colleague, smirks with amusement. Annette thoughtfully adds that he was also very honest, but seemed quite shy. The Empress and the lady-in-waiting share a moment of stunned silence, both internally screaming about who this person she's describing could possibly be. They arrive at a beautiful garden pavilion where the Empress Dowager awaits them for tea. The Empress Dowager greets them with a look of mild irritation. She states that she was on her way to tea when she overheard such nonsense that she thought something was wrong with her ears. At the tea table, the Empress Dowager warns Annette not to blame her when she finds out she's been tricked, as she doesn't recall raising her son to be so cunning. Annette tactfully changes the subject, thanking the Empress Dowager for the dress she's wearing and promising to treasure it. The Empress Dowager waves it off, telling her to just wear it, as the Empress cheerfully explains that making clothes is her mother-in-law's hobby. Blushing with shy gratitude, Annette thanks the Empress Dowager again. Both the Empress and the Empress Dowager are charmed, thinking how adorable Annette is. The Empress's pleasant mood shifts as she notices someone approaching from behind Annette. A dark-haired knight in a white and gold uniform rushes toward them, urgently addressing the Empress. Annette turns, wondering who this Sir Loitz is. The Empress identifies him as Mikhail's escort knight, her expression hardening as she questions why he's here when the prince should be in class. Clink. She calmly lifts her teacup, her smile gone. A dark aura surrounds the Empress as she sweetly deduces Mikhail has skipped class and disappeared again, demanding to know his whereabouts. Her deceptively calm smile remains as she pointedly repeats her question, asking Sir Loitz where her son is. The knight nervously explains that the crown prince vanished, and despite his best efforts, he couldn't find him anywhere. The Empress looks downcast, sighing that Mikhail has been acting strangely lately and wasn't like this before. Her eyes narrow with frustration as she laments his inability to focus and his constant wandering. The Empress Dowager notes that Sir Loitz is a skilled guard, prompting Annette to wonder if Mikhail went somewhere a guard can't follow. The Empress agrees it's a valid point, her expression sharp, as she concludes that a place a royal guard can't reach must be the secret garden. The purple-haired woman declines to go to the garden, preferring a walk alone, but another woman invites the princess to come along, and Annette happily accepts. As they approach the ornate garden gates, the Grand Duke bows low to Annette, who is accompanied by the purple-haired woman and a silver-haired woman. Walking through the serene garden, Annette realizes she didn't get to appreciate its beauty last time and notes the profound quietness. She stops suddenly, feeling as though the garden exists in a space and time completely separate from the rest of the world. As Annette continues her walk, a faint sound drifts through the air. She turns her head, puzzled by the distant noise she just heard. The silver-haired woman also hears something and suggests to the purple-haired woman that they investigate, as Annette follows. Annette's eyes widen as she realizes she's hearing two distinct voices, meaning the person isn't alone. The purple-haired woman holds Annette back as they spot a young blonde boy with a black-haired girl who is identified as Audrey from Marcus Mellon's family. Annoyed, the purple-haired woman internally fumes over the boy bringing an outsider into the secret garden and vows to give him a stern scolding. Just as the Empress is about to storm off, the silver-haired Empress Dowager grabs her arm, stopping her in her tracks. The Empress Dowager calmly reminds the fuming Empress that they are still just children. The Empress reluctantly agrees with the Empress Dowager, deciding they will wait for a little while. In a cutesy moment, the Empress Dowager cheekily suggests they eavesdrop on the children's conversation, much to the Empress's confusion. The Empress clenches her fist in disbelief, asking the Empress Dowager what she thinks she's doing. With a sly smile, the Empress Dowager explains that from their position, they'll be able to hear everything. The Empress leans over to tell Annette that servants are not allowed in the garden, so she should feel at ease. Annette reassures her that she's fine, admitting to herself that she's also curious about the Crown Prince's secret conversation. Near a fountain, the black-haired girl asks the blonde-haired Crown Prince what seems to be troubling him so much. She wonders if he's struggling with difficult homework, but he quietly denies it. Shaking his head, the prince asks the girl, Audrey, if she thinks he's an idiot. Audrey explains that she had to beg her father just to visit the palace, and worries she will be in trouble if he finds her there. The prince is taken aback by her sudden topic change, and asks her to just be honest with him. Audrey confidently declares that, of course, she would still like him, even if he weren't the Crown Prince. Overjoyed by her answer, the prince clenches his fists and beams, declaring her my Audrey, before making a decision. Hiding nearby, the Empress and Empress Dowager are utterly shocked by what they've just overheard. Annette blushes in disbelief, wondering what the Crown Prince is saying, and if he truly intends to give up his position. Crying, Audrey protests that it's not possible to simply throw away the position of Crown Prince, but he asks why she's so surprised. He presses her, asking if she wouldn't like him if he weren't the Crown Prince, while she insists that's not it at all. With a heavy sigh, the prince argues that it's not absurd, claiming he was told one should give up anything for a loved one. A shocked Audrey demands to know who on earth told him something so strange. A silent, awkward moment passes between the two children by the fountain. Audrey insists it's ridiculous for him to abandon his position, prompting the frustrated prince to cry out her name. Listening in, the Empress and Empress Dowager cover their faces in secondhand embarrassment, while Annette looks on uncomfortably. The Empress deduces that Grand Duke Harzant must have put these strange ideas in her son's head, but questions why he would want to give up the throne. The Empress Dowager decides it's time to leave, acknowledging the prince's ridiculous statement but respecting Lady Mellon's firm stance. The Empress agrees to leave, deciding she will have a private talk with the Crown Prince later. As the Empress stands, her shoe lands on a twig, making a loud crack. Startled by the sound, the Crown Prince whirls around and nervously calls out, asking who's there. The three royal eavesdroppers begin to panic as the prince shouts again, demanding whoever is hiding to show themselves. Annette grimaces nervously, bracing herself for the inevitable confrontation. Stepping out from behind a pillar with a strained smile, Annette announces her presence and admits she overheard their conversation. The Crown Prince points at her accusingly, demanding to know how much she heard, as Audrey asks who this new girl is. Flustered, the prince stammers as he tries to figure out how to introduce Annette to Audrey. His explanation is cut short when he is shocked to realize that Audrey has started crying. Wiping a tear from her eye, Audrey says she thought she was the only one invited and feels hurt he was hiding another precious person. The prince and Annette both rush forward in a panic to correct the misunderstanding, with the prince insisting Annette isn't his guest. In his frantic attempt to explain, the prince declares that Annette is his mother's guest and then blurts out that she might be his fiancé. Annette waves her hands frantically, shouting that it's a huge misunderstanding, while the prince desperately tries to reassure Audrey that she is the only one he needs. As Audrey tells the prince he doesn't need to go so far for her, a flustered Annette continues trying to explain the situation is a misunderstanding. The young blonde prince shuts his eyes and cries out in frustration. A violent force erupts, sending the three children Annette, Audrey, and the prince flying through the air amidst debris. In a stately office, Cardin Harsent greets his brother, the blonde emperor, teasingly asking him to guess what he's brought. Cardin proudly displays a document from the temple, announcing he is now officially engaged to the princess. The emperor smirks, cynically asking if Cardin came to brag about the engagement after ignoring him previously. The emperor correctly guesses the princess is busy, and Cardin admits she's having tea with the empress and empress dowager, though he wanted to see her immediately. When the emperor asks about delaying the royal marriage, he states he'll be fine and wants to resolve the current situation properly to prevent future incidents. Cardin tells his brother that he can't always rely on him every time his body transforms. Noticing the skeptical looks from the emperor and his aide, Cardin insists that it's not what they think. Cardin gazes thoughtfully, thinking that while Annette is still a child, he wants to look after and comfort her. Cardin asks Sir Melon if he knows the princess, and the aide confirms he's seen her, as she's at the top of the imperial protection list. Observing that the princess is the same age as Audrey, Cardin asks what young girls typically like besides dolls and sweets. Sir Melon explains his frail daughter Audrey enjoys reading at home, prompting the emperor to tease that Lady Melon likes his son, Miko, the most. The emperor dismisses his own joke, saying they should drop the subject, since the children seem to like each other. A sudden tension flashes between the two brothers, reflected in their piercing blue eyes. Clatter, the emperor suddenly lurches forward behind a golden screen, startling Cardin, who asks what's wrong. The two blonde men stare at each other with grave, knowing expressions. Looking out the window, the emperor identifies the source of the disturbance as the secret garden. A massive shockwave tears through the garden as a disembodied voice wonders what in the world is happening. Annette's eyes widen in alarm as she realizes the children are in danger. The blast violently throws the three children across the stone ground. As the terrace cracks and shatters around them, the prince reaches for the fallen girls, screaming Audrey's name. The prince frantically tries to wake the unconscious Audrey, but Annette, sitting up nearby, advises him not to shake her. The empress and empress dowager rush down the steps to the scene as the prince cries out to his mother and grandmother in surprise. The empress dowager thanks Annette for her help, and the empress checks if she's hurt. Annette deflects, saying Lady Melon is the one who needs attention. A thought from an unseen observer questions what is happening here. Cardin and the emperor arrive, taking in the chaotic scene in the garden. The young prince looks up with tear-filled eyes, calling out to his father and uncle. The emperor orders Audrey to be taken away as Marquise Melon is waiting, while Annette watches with concern, hoping the girl isn't badly hurt. Annette is startled to find Cardin suddenly standing beside her, asking when he arrived. He calmly asks if her visit to the temple went well, leaving her to stammer a reply. Taking her hand, Cardin expresses his heartbreak that she let her body get into such a state and even hurt her face. As he gently wipes a smudge from her cheek, Annette apologizes, but insists she'll recover soon. Cardin asks what she has to be sorry for, and she quietly wonders if it's because she made him upset. Pouting, Annette internally fumes, wondering why he isn't praising her after she tried her best. Scolding herself for being childish, she turns to leave, but Cardin stops her, asking for one more promise. He gently holds her chin, observing that she's covered in cuts but hasn't complained about the pain at all. Cardin looks down at her with a concerned and serious expression. Annette looks up at him, her heart thumping in her chest. With the group gathered, Cardin states they need to hear what happened, as the prince complains he can't see past his mother. Annette nervously glances up at the towering figure beside her. The empress grabs her son Mikhail's shoulder, sternly asking him to repeat his earlier words, startling the boy who realizes she was listening. The empress confirms she heard him tell Audrey he'd abandon his family and his position as crown prince. The emperor demands an explanation, and Mikhail explains he was taught that true love means being ready to give up everything. Looking irritated, the empress pinches the bridge of her nose and asks her son who taught him such nonsense. She glares suspiciously at Cardin, questioning if he was the source of these disloyal words, and asserting that he wouldn't do such a thing. Cardin admits he said something similar, but asks his nephew if he remembers the context. leaving the prince confused. He reminds Mikhail that he taught him that strength is needed to protect a loved one, and being willing to sacrifice is to ensure one doesn't become obsessed with power alone. Cardin challenges the prince, asking if he could truly protect Audrey after throwing everything away and accusing him of acting on a whim. The emperor admonishes Mikhail, reminding him of his duty to the empire and its people, and questioning how he could treat his position so trivially. In a flashback, a young blonde boy confronts a blonde man and a purple-haired woman, insisting he was wrong but still has reservations. The boy Mikhail declares he won't be crown prince if it means marrying the pink-haired girl, announcing he will marry someone named Audrey instead. The blonde man face palms, telling Mikhail it's all a misunderstanding while the young prince looks on in confusion. The masked Grand Duke lifts the pink-haired girl into his arms, proclaiming she is his princess, as she nervously asks to be put down. Shocked, Mikhail demands to know if she's his uncle's princess, and the purple-haired empress confirms that it's true. The Grand Duke asks Mikhail why he's staring at him like a pervert, while the girl tries to interject. As Mikhail throws a tantrum, the blonde man restrains him while others cry out for the crown prince in alarm. The blonde man, holding the now sleeping Mikhail, thanks the princess and promises to explain everything later. As the royal couple leaves with their son, the Grand Duke reassures the princess that Mikhail is simply exhausted. Back in the present, the pink-haired princess looks utterly bewildered, wondering what just happened. The masked Grand Duke gazes at her, a thoughtful expression on his face as he considers the situation. The princess pieces things together, realizing that the chaotic incident must be connected to the crown prince. Staring ahead, she confirms her suspicion that the crown prince is at the heart of the recent disturbance. The Grand Duke turns to her, acknowledging her insight and praising her for being quick to understand. He kneels before her, explaining that he cannot give her details yet as he needs to investigate the matter himself. He promises to tell her more later, and she, with a worried expression, accepts his terms. As he moves to leave, he insists on carrying her, reminding her that she's injured and cannot walk on her own. He carries her away as the sun sets, adding that it's faster this way, causing her to let out a small sigh. A flashback shows a cruel blonde man yelling at his young son, disowning him until he awakens his authority. The man violently grabs his son, screaming that he must awaken a powerful authority or he will be useless. The scene shifts to a bedroom where the son, now grown, gently places a blanket over the sleeping empress as she watches their child. Creak, he quietly slips out of the room, closing the door behind him. He walks alone through a moonlit garden, heading toward a grand, multi-tiered fountain. Standing by the glowing fountain, narration explains this protected rear garden was the imperial family's training ground. He reflects on the immense pressure of awakening and authority as he stands in the garden. He suddenly stumbles and falls to the ground, crying out in pain. The memory returns of his father berating him at 15 for being a disgrace, as the young boy can only apologize. His father scornfully announces that a 3-year-old named Cardin will have to begin training with him instead. The boy is horrified at the thought, protesting that Cardin is far too young for such a thing. His father dismisses his concerns, stating that bloodline is all that matters, and citing a royal who awakened their powers at age 5. The young boy looks flustered, vehemently denying an unspoken accusation from his father. His father turns his back on him, coldly ordering him to awaken his authority quickly. He leaves with a final threat. If he doesn't, the little Cardin he cares for will be forced to train. The man narrates that he foolishly awakened his ability that night to protect his brother Cardin, then wonders aloud, "Brother?" Startled, he looks up to see another man has entered the garden, causing him to exclaim in surprise. A blond man with glasses smiles gently, asking if he interrupted his thoughts. The first man asks what startled him, and the man with glasses explains he was investigating the earlier incident. He notes that the garden has already been magically restored, but that he still has his suspicions about what happened. The man with glasses teases his brother for finally taking off his frustrating mask, since only royals can be in this garden. His brother looks away as the man with glasses adds, "It would be nice if he took it off for good." The man with glasses grows serious, asking if Mikhail was the one who awakened, and if his brother knew all along. His brother looks exhausted, telling him not to start, since his sister-in-law already gave him an earful. The man with glasses presses further, questioning if the only reason he kept it a secret was Mikhail's young age. His eyes narrow as he gets to the real heart of the matter. He asks if Mikhail's authority is the same as the late emperor's. Resigned, his brother admits that he was right, but adds that their nephew's ability seems far greater than the late emperor's. The man with glasses scoffs that the late emperor could barely move a glass of water. But his brother worries about Mikhail's immense power. He explains that since authority is tied to life force, great power carries great risk, and keeping it secret was because of his own past. He recalls how their coercive father used crisis to awaken authority and confesses he didn't tell anyone because he didn't want to be like him. His brother sighs that he's too serious, reminding him of their mother saying that her children never turned out as she wished. He then teases him, asking if the incident was just an excuse to avoid meeting a marquis's daughter, which his brother flusteredly denies. The blonde emperor concludes that the incident was the likely cause and trusts Mikhail has learned his lesson. He recalls the violent explosion, thinking that until Mikhail can control his power, he remains a danger to himself and others. The emperor acknowledges that without the princess, the situation could have been a disaster, and decides he must explain everything to her. He resolves to find a proper solution by revealing his own ability to her for reference. A caption introduces him as Lucius, who rules time, and he internally vows that he cannot stand by and watch his benefactor suffer. Cardin questions what would happen if the ability doesn't work on the princess, prompting Lucius to reveal he secretly tested it before. Lucius recalls the moment during the last banquet when he gave the princess a purification stone. A flashback shows the glowing blue purification stone being passed from his hands to hers. Lucius explains that he sped up her time by a week during that moment, and now offers to use his ability to return her to her original form. Cardin listens with a thoughtful, serious expression. The scene shifts to a formal meeting in a lavish room, where Lucius addresses the princess, acknowledging she must have been very surprised. The masked man, Cardin, explains to Annette that the accident was caused by an imperial family ability known as authority. Annette replies that she understands, having already predicted as much from what she heard while in Hayworth. She recalls the history of the imperial authority, a powerful force that manifests in times of crisis, but has grown dormant as the empire strengthened. In an ornate frame, her thought concludes, she believed it was just a legend. Cardin clarifies that the incident occurred because Mikhail is still in a state where he cannot perfectly control his newly awakened power. Annette internally realizes they are sharing such confidential information with her because she was a direct witness to the event. With a pleasant smile, Lucius reveals that his personal authority is related to time. He explains his ability allows him to turn back the time of a person or a space, capable of making 1 minute feel like a year, or vice versa. A shocked Annette silently questions why he is revealing all of this to her. She asks if His Majesty's authority could be used to find her original body, and Lucius confirms that it is entirely possible. Annette falls silent, deep in thought, as Cardin watches her from across the table. Looking up with resolve, Annette apologizes to the Emperor. She turns her head away, her expression conflicted and troubled. Lucius tells her he wants to repay the favor she did for them, but Annette is stunned he'd reveal such a huge secret for that reason. She questions the timing of this offer, thinking that if her body returns quickly, it will resolve any obstacles to the royal marriage. Recalling the chaos of the explosion, Annette nervously wonders if using the Emperor's power carries any risks. As Lucius offers his help anytime, Annette asks if there is a limit or a condition required to activate his power. Following a moment of hesitation and a whispered comment from the Empress, Lucius admits there is one condition. Startled, Annette asks if the price for using his power is his life force. Lucius clarifies that life force is not the same as lifespan. It is simply energy that can be replenished with sufficient rest. Annette confirms that she fully understands his explanation. Looking at the royal couple, she asks when her body can be returned to its original state. She sits quietly, her expression serious as she contemplates their offer. Lucius, sensing her hesitation, reassures her that he is truly fine and willing to help. Annette explains that she isn't refusing his help, but since the Grand Duke has already hired a magician, she wishes to wait for those results first. Cardin confirms that the magician, Martin, visited her the previous day. As the Empress recognizes Martin's name, a flashback shows the robed magician taking Annette's blood while Cardin gently comforts her. Annette reflects on her situation, a 24-year-old trapped in an 8-year-old's body, and steels her resolve to turn back. Cardin agrees with her decision, assuring her that there will be other ways to solve her problem. Annette gives a quick, uncertain glance, still looking troubled. Cardin turns his masked face slightly, his expression hidden as he observes her. Lucius agrees to her terms but sets a deadline. If no solution is found within 3 months, they will proceed with using his power. Walking through a garden, Annette is overwhelmed by the reality of magic she'd only read about, and the pressure to find a solution in 3 months. A sudden headache strikes her, and she clutches her chest in pain. The world around her seems to spin as she grows dizzy. Gasp! Sensing a presence, Annette calls out that she knows someone is there, startling a hiding Prince Mikhail. She turns and pointedly asks Prince Mikhail what he is doing there. Mikhail pops out from his hiding spot, his eyes sparkling as he enthusiastically admits he was extremely curious about her. He excitedly calls her his political marriage partner and raves about how cool she was when she protected him and Audrey during the garden's collapse. The pink-haired princess declares her desire to be strong, like her uncle said, then asks Mikhail if the Grand Duke ever mentioned her before. Mikhail enthusiastically confirms his uncle talked about the princess a lot, prompting her to nervously ask what he said. Tapping his head, Mikhail struggles to recall the specific word his uncle used to describe her. The princess waits with bated breath, anxiously wondering what the Grand Duke could have known about her, as Mikhail finally remembers. Her mind races with dark possibilities, wondering if he called her a beast, cursed, or mentioned her ominous red eyes. With a bright smile, Mikhail announces that his uncle called her the person he respects most in the world. The princess is left speechless, quietly repeating the word, respect, in utter disbelief. Mikhail excitedly asks if she's stronger than his uncle, to which she bashfully admits they haven't sparred. The masked Grand Duke suddenly appears, confidently declaring that in a fight between them, the princess would win. Mikhail runs to embrace his uncle, who kneels and praises him, predicting he'll grow even taller now that he's awakened his power. When Mikhail asks if he would really lose to the princess, the Grand Duke lovingly replies that he could never raise a hand against her. The princess is stunned, as she realizes his definition of defeat is one of pure affection. The Grand Duke tells Mikhail it's time to join the Empress in the reception room, and the boy eagerly runs ahead. As Mikhail dashes off, the Grand Duke turns to the princess and asks where she has been. He explains he was returning from visiting Martin's, and that the research he inquired about will take some time. A beautifully wrapped pink gift box with a large ribbon is shown. He presents the gift box to the princess, who stares at it with a questioning look. He offers her the gift, telling her to try a sweet since he knows she likes them. The box opens to reveal a collection of sparkling, multicolored spherical candies. The princess curiously puts one of the candies in her mouth to taste it. Her cheeks puff out as she enjoys the treat, and the Grand Duke looks on, relieved that she seems to like it. She struggles fiercely, yelling at him for treating her like a child, while he feigns injury, crying out that she's hurting him. Inside the palace, he dramatically claims she bruised him, and she apologetically admits she failed to control her strength. Walking down a grand corridor, he tells her she needs to be gentler, then slyly asks if it really hurts. They find Mikhail hesitating outside a doorway, and the Grand Duke asks why he hasn't gone in yet. The young prince looks nervously toward the room, stammering about his aunt and uncle. Confused, the princess asks if something is wrong, and Mikhail admits he finds it hard to go inside. The Empress appears in the doorway, stating she came out because of the noise, and Mikhail happily greets his mother. The Empress sternly scolds Mikhail for being late when guests are waiting, but he nervously insists that's not the case. A black-haired girl named Audrey of the Melon Marquisate formally introduces herself, and the pink-haired princess worriedly calls her name. Audrey offers a gentle, pleasant smile. Now seated on a sofa, the princess is uncomfortably sandwiched between Mikhail and Audrey, wondering why they both chose to sit next to her. She recalls that when Audrey greeted her earlier, she correctly identified her as Princess Hayworth. Realizing Audrey knows her true identity, she wonders why the girl isn't afraid and if she hasn't heard the terrifying rumors about her. Audrey prepares to leave, but Mikhail quickly stops her, asking her to wait a minute. Leaning closer, Mikhail nervously asks Audrey if she is afraid of his newfound power. Audrey looks at him calmly and plainly states that she is not afraid. Turning to the princess, Audrey gently pats her hand and tells her to cheer up, leaving the princess confused but grateful. Audrey explains she hasn't had a chance to thank the princess for the incident in the garden, having learned the details from the Empress Dowager. Bowing deeply, Audrey sincerely thanks Princess Hayworth for saving her life, leaving the princess flustered and dismissive. Audrey mentioned she had only heard rumors, making the princess wonder if she's referring to the rumors of her being a monster. Audrey compliments the princess's beautiful eyes and red hair, comparing her to a rose and confessing her envy, which leaves the princess blushing and touched. Mikhail jumps in to praise Audrey's hair as well, causing Audrey to blush and joke that he's just infatuated with her. The Empress observes the scene on a magical viewer, confidently telling the Grand Duke that Audrey won't expose Annette's identity, as Annette playfully argues with a bird on screen. The Grand Duke crosses his arms, sulking that even the children seem to have stolen the princess away from him, which makes the Empress understand his earlier stiffness. A memory of the princess laughing freely and happily with the two children flashes by. The scene transitions down an ornate and empty palace corridor. As they walk, the Grand Duke comments that he's never seen her laugh so freely before, asking if she enjoyed her time with the children. He calls her laughing face cute and, noting she must be tired from talking with the children, offers to carry her to her room. In a grand hall, Annette insists to the masked Carden that she can walk on her own and asks him not to treat her like a child. She internally fumes, annoyed that he continues to treat her like a child. Carden explains he is upset because she neglects her own well-being and asks her to promise she'll cherish herself from now on. Pondering his request, Annette admits to herself that she doesn't truly understand what it means to cherish her own body. She flashes back to her brutal life of fighting monsters, reflecting that she's so used to pain she doesn't know how to cherish herself. Carden pleads with the princess to cherish herself as she looks up, focusing on his intense eyes. As Carden suggests they go together, Annette asks if he is angry because she resents being treated like a child. Covering his face, Carden tells her she doesn't know how lovely she is, to which Annette simply replies, "Ah, I see." Annette thinks to herself that her real question isn't about how to cherish her body. She continues her thought, wondering about the sincerity behind his mask, leaving him looking confused. She questions whether his kindness is genuine or simply amusement and deceit aimed at her child form. Announcing she's not angry, Annette declares her intention to attend the dinner banquet and asks if he will be there with the royal family. Carden confirms there's a banquet, but explains that he usually eats separately due to his mask. Annette understands, remembering he told her that his face was disfigured by monster's blood. She feels a pang of sympathy, realizing how lonely he must be eating by himself. After reflecting on her own solitary meals, she considers asking him to eat with her but hesitates, not wanting to make him uncomfortable about his mask. Deciding to change the subject, she tells him there's something she'd like to do, and he eagerly offers to grant her any wish. He correctly guesses she wants to learn etiquette, which she confirms she never learned properly as a child. She adds that she also wants to study the history of the Arkan Empire, and asks to visit the library. Though briefly suspicious of her motives, Carden dismisses his doubts and readily agrees to her request for access to the library or anything else she desires. While overjoyed and blushing, Annette is stunned by his immediate and unconditional agreement. She marvels at this unexpected gain, thrilled at the prospect of reading books from the Imperial Library after a lifetime of only having abandoned texts. The thought makes her pause as she remembers her brother, Franz, also helped her read books. A flashback explains that her brother, Franz, was treated as a prince before their mother, the previous queen, passed away. After their mother died, giving birth to Annette, and a new queen took the throne, Franz became an outcast, seen as a burden. A montage shows that, despite his physical weakness, Franz supported Annette by providing books and swords for her training. Being her only brother. Pulled from her memories, Annette looks worried and wonders if Franz is doing well. Carden interrupts her thoughts, asking why she's suddenly so curious about the Empire and the Grand Duchy. She stammers, caught off guard. She explains that since the Arkan Empire is now her home and the Harzant Grand Duchy is where she will live, it's natural to want to learn more. Blushing, she thinks to herself that this is the first time she has ever spoken her true feelings so openly. Carden stands silently with his back to her, a blush creeping up his neck. He turns and kneels, thanking her sincerely for her words and expressing his happiness, which makes her stammer in reply. Standing, Carden suggests she visit a different library instead of the Imperial one. He gently touches her hair and offers her access to our castle's library, leaving her to question his use of the word our. He informs her that his subordinates will arrive from the Grand Duchy tomorrow and they will depart right after lunch. When she questions him, calling it our castle before they're married, he casually replies that it won't be long now. She expresses surprise at the sudden departure, but he explains that he ordered his people to travel non-stop to retrieve her quickly. He reveals his plan to inform his mother tonight, so everyone else will know about their departure by morning. When she questions the suddenness, he firmly says no, explaining that her popularity makes it difficult for him to keep her to himself if she stays any longer. A tiny, mischievous version of Cardin declares they should leave as soon as possible, while a tiny, confused Annette wonders if that's the real reason. The scene transitions with the sharp, rhythmic sound of marching boots. In a brief flash forward, a legion of men pledge their unwavering allegiance to her as the new mistress of the Grand Ducal House. The scene shifts to Cardin visiting a silver-haired woman in a sitting room who asks what brings him there. He claims he simply missed his mother. The woman sips her tea with a skeptical expression, telling him to stop beating around the bush and state his true purpose. Thud. Getting straight to the point, Cardin asks what she thought of her, prompting his mother to clarify if he means that child. His mother bluntly states the girl is too good for him, but Cardin just smiles and agrees that their princess is adorable. The silver-haired woman observes that, contrary to rumors, Annette is rather ordinary and possesses flawless basic etiquette despite lacking formal education. Cardin dismisses the rumors as meaningless and pointedly asks his mother if she resents the princess. Sighing, his mother admits she can't stand seeing him wear that suffocating mask. He replies that it's unavoidable. Seeing her own reflection in her tea, she states that she has sent everyone away and orders him to take off his mask. Unmasked. A blonde man with red eyes thanks his mother, cheekily adding he wanted her to remember his handsome face before he left. His mother, the Empress Dowager, retorts that it would be better if he couldn't talk, then asks where he is going. He casually announces he's leaving with the princess tomorrow, shocking his mother as he tells her not to look disappointed. When she asks if that's all he came to say, he seriously explains that if she objects, the princess won't go. He gives her a cheerful thumbs up, telling her not to be like that as she seethes with frustration. He dangles a tantalizing offer, suggesting the sooner they leave, the sooner she'll get to see her grandchildren. As an image of two adorable children flashes in her mind, the flustered Empress Dowager wonders if he means grandchildren. She scolds him for teasing his elders, but he insists with a smug look that he is being completely serious. Resigned, she tells him to treat the princess well as he leaves, and he assures her not to worry. Now, wearing his mask again, he bids his mother farewell from the doorway, promising to see her tomorrow and write often. The Empress Dowager sighs as he departs, wondering who her willful son takes after. She stands alone in the quiet, ornate room, lost in thought after their conversation. In another scene, Mikhail throws a tantrum on the ground, wailing for his auntie not to leave him behind. The Empress picks up her crying son, sternly reminding him to uphold his dignity as the crown prince. Mikhail tearfully reminds the princess of her promise to teach him swordsmanship, and she promises she will be back soon. When he asks if she really means it, she promises to return for the royal wedding and help him with his training then. As the imperial family gathers, the Empress looks at the pink-haired princess and sincerely thanks her for everything. The Empress encourages her not to say a final goodbye, hoping they will meet again in good health. Hearing that the betrothal gifts are being sent today, the princess anxiously asks if they're sending everything from the original, massive list. The Emperor and Empress stand together, and he confirms with a smile that they are indeed sending everything. The princess worries that the list of gifts, which had shocked her own kingdom, is far too much. The masked Grand Duke tells her it's not too much at all, but she still looks unconvinced. The Emperor insists her worth is far greater, and the Empress agrees the gifts are not nearly enough to welcome her to the Empire. Kneeling beside her, the Grand Duke reassures her that the gifts aren't excessive, believing even they are not enough. The sound of thundering hooves echoes as horses approach at a gallop. The Grand Duke announces the arrival of the knights from the Grand Ducal Castle. A troop of knights on horseback, led by a stern-faced captain, rides into the courtyard. In perfect unison, the knights bow and formally greet the princess as the new lady of the Grand Ducal House. The princess is bewildered, wondering why the knights don't seem surprised to see her. The Grand Duke explains it wouldn't be proper for them to be surprised, joking he was more worried they'd be stunned by her beauty. The knights are struck speechless as a man with brown hair and glasses rushes toward the Grand Duke. The man with glasses tells the knights to pull themselves together, while their captain reports to the Grand Duke that they are ready to depart. The Grand Duke notes someone is missing before spotting his mother arriving, relieved she is finally here. The Empress Dowager approaches and asks the princess if they might speak privately for a moment. Surprised, the princess agrees, formally addressing the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager leads the young princess to a quiet balcony for their private talk. With a sad smile, the Empress Dowager confesses that despite her son Cardin's words, she can't help but feel sad to see her go. She explained she had more outfits altered for the princess and loaded onto her carriage since her departure was so sudden. The princess is deeply touched, thanking the Empress Dowager and feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. She recalls the Empress Dowager complaining about cumbersome dresses from the Hayworth family, making the gesture even more meaningful. Flustered by the kindness, the princess feels she should express that she's been given more than she deserves. The Empress Dowager says she wanted to give her one last gift in person, opening a small, elegant box. She presents a pair of stunning green teardrop earrings, explaining they are a keepsake from her own family. Embracing the girl, she thanks her for becoming her daughter and a part of their family. Overcome with emotion, the princess clings to the Empress Dowager as tears stream down her face. She cries uncontrollably, wondering when she last allowed herself to weep so freely. She realizes this is the first time she has cried like this since someone named Sarah died. The Grand Duke rushes over, asking his mother why she made the princess cry, as they both try to comfort the sobbing girl. The Emperor and Empress watch the emotional scene unfold from a distance, their expressions filled with concern. As her family looks on, the Grand Duke and his mother gently comfort the crying princess, offering to wipe away her tears. As a carriage rattles along, an unseen voice observes that the princess's eyes are swollen from crying. Inside the ornate carriage, Annette asks the masked Carden not to tease her. Carden explains he was genuinely startled when he heard she was crying after her talk with his mother. With her eyes shut tight, a blushing Annette apologizes for worrying him. He gently tells her to only cry in front of him from now on, so he can be the one to give her a handkerchief. Changing the subject, Carden presents a letter to a surprised Annette. He reveals the letter is from Audrey, the Marquess's daughter, and Annette recognizes the name, Russell. Annette takes the letter, her expression one of quiet curiosity. Reading the letter, Annette learns Audrey hopes to correspond and will recommend books. She resolves to prepare gifts for everyone, and Carden readily offers his help. The carriage continues its journey through a forest as night falls. One of Carden's men reports that the area is clear, but they must camp for the night. Carden turns to Annette and asks if she is all right with the idea of camping. She assures him she's fine, having often camped during demonic beast subjugations, though she privately admits she's far too used to it. Carden helps her out of the carriage, gently reminding her to watch her step. Annette quietly mutters that being called princess is a bit much, only to realize his men overheard as they awkwardly try to ignore her comment. An attendant calls Carden away for a moment, and he tells Annette he will be right back. As Carden departs, another attendant with glasses offers to guide Annette to a resting spot. Walking through the camp, Annette notes the impressive condition of the knights' uniforms and weapons. Watching the knights set up camp, she wonders how her old knight order is faring. A flashback shows her as an adult commander on horseback, rallying her exhausted troops during a fierce battle. The memory continues, showing her knights locked in a desperate, bloody struggle. After the battle, her men sit around a campfire, excitedly praising her amazing performance. One knight expresses awe at seeing their commander fight in person for the first time. Another knight praises her skill, befitting the Hayworth Kingdom's order, while teasing his comrade for being an obvious rookie. Standing nearby, Annette overhears her men discussing the disheartening news that their budget increase was canceled again. The knights express their shock and frustration, learning their budget request was rejected and blaming their lack of noble status. They bitterly complain about being the most skilled, yet earning less than the pampered royal guard. Overhearing their struggles, Annette regrets coming near, as one mentions her fruitless efforts with the Ministry of Finance. As one knight asks who cleans up the mess and another worries about his debt, Annette's expression hardens with frustration. The men share their personal financial hardships, unable to even lend each other money for family needs. Annette internally fumes, contemplating skimming profits from demonic beast parts to pay her own debts, but scolding herself for the desperate thought. Back in the present, Annette reflects on her past delusion that successful missions would solve everything. When they only deepened the royal family's discrimination against her, Carden finds her sitting alone by the fire and approaches with a bowl of soup. Offering her dinner, he gently asks what she was thinking about. He notes that the warm vegetable soup has cooled to the perfect temperature for her. Holding a spoonful, Carden tries to feed her, telling her to say, "ah," much to her surprise. Flustered, Annette insists she can eat by herself. He persists, saying he knows, but he wants to feed her, as her inner voice urges her to be firm. Thanking her for her compliance, He holds the spoon steady before her. She hesitantly opens her mouth and accepts the food, blushing as she eats. Cupid's arrow strikes Carden as he internally gushes over how cute she is. He tells her he's been thinking about something and has become quite confident about it. With her cheeks still full, Annette curiously asks him what it is. As his men also freeze in disbelief, Carden doubles down, promising he'll be there to put her to sleep. Startled, Annette grabs his hand and stands up abruptly. Whoosh! She flees into the woods, leaving a bewildered Carden calling her name. His attendant rushes over, demanding to know why she ran and scolding him for sounding like a total pervert. Infuriated, Carden grabs the man, denying it, but the attendant points out he was talking about having children with someone who looks like a child. As Carden stands stunned, Annette peeks from behind a tree, utterly disappointed, and labeling him a pervert Grand Duke, while he stammers that it wasn't his intention. The princess sits in her carriage, blushing as her heart thumps, thinking this feels too much like they're a married couple. The scene shifts to a dark night at the Hayworth Demonic Beast Subjugation Night Order Outpost, where a voice asks for the number of injured and dead. A report confirms that both numbers have doubled, and a grim voice warns that the Night Order's very existence is now in jeopardy. Over an image of an ornate crest, a person asks just how bad the situation has become. John Millard, vice commander of the Hayworth Royal Night Order, scoffs internally, believing the order is in jeopardy simply because one commander is gone.